Simon. Simon, you're muted if you can hear me.
I just, what a fucking idiot. Sorry, pardon my French. Anyway, right, we have sound. What we've been trying to do is get on Twitter. Now, I think Twitter has just been able to hear all that. And we tried doing it through the technology that we have here, but this is what we've come up with. Okay. But if it works, it works. We can hear in spaces. Well, that's good enough for me. It may look like utter rubbish here. And you can hear John. Now we're on a winner. Okay. Right. So that means we're going out there and it's not too blurred. I'm emotional. I really am. Right. So John's been on here loads of times before. I know John personally, and John showed me around Northern Ireland before and explained to me the problems that are going on over there. Not to give you too much of an insight. Years ago, there was the troubles over there. One side wanted the Brits out. One side didn't want to leave and wouldn't leave, obviously, because it was their right to stay. There was a lot more to it than that. It wasn't just religion. There was a lot of stuff that went into it. But either way, there were years and years of violence from all sides. And in the end, they tried to make a peace process. The peace process wasn't easy because both sides couldn't stand each other. Obviously, they've been at war for years, but realized that the only way to go forward was going to be through politics, the ballot paper, not like Martin McGuinness said, with the Armalite in one hand and the ballot paper in the other, because that was the belief. But this will come, that statement will come into what we're talking about, or will be talking about. So the original peace process was a drawn-out effort where there was a ceasefire, then the ceasefire would be dropped, then the ceasefire would be brought back up, and then the ceasefire would be forgotten about. And the best thing I could do actually is let John explain a little bit more, because what's happening now, we think, is a slight reflection on what's happened before. And there's a pattern emerging. And the peace process back then was basically an appeasement process, not basically, if one side didn't get what they want, they spat their dummy out and then violence ensued. So, John, if I put it over to you now, because you're going to be able to do a lot better than I am on this one, but so where are we at the moment? Why are we in problems? And also a little bit of history about what you've been up to lately. So in any which way, in any which order you want, crack on.
Okay, good evening all. That's to the live chat. If you watch your news at the minute, what you'll hear that there's going to be a deal with reference the Northern Ireland Protocol is what they call it. Now, the Northern Ireland Protocol, what it did was that it separated Northern Ireland from the people in England, Scotland, and Wales. And it separated them in a way that there is a technical customs and regulatory border at Larne, at Belfast, at one point. That's technically known as the Irish Sea. Now, what is happening in Northern Ireland, that there was a peace accord, and a so-called peace accord in 1998. That would be the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And what that peace accord was meant to be, and I'll use this terminology, it was meant to be a peace process. But it has turned out to be nothing of the sort. It has turned out to be a one-way street towards this so-called New Ireland, which everybody talks about. Now, that would be a good thing, that if the people of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland were united in their hearts and in their minds and working together for good things. But we can't avoid the fact that people in Northern Ireland has actually murdered each other and killed each other in the past. Because of a patch of land known as Northern Ireland. And that patch of land, whether that you're on the side of wanting that patch of land to belong to the Irish Republic, or you're wanting that patch of land to be for the United Kingdom, well, it's always going to be a fight. It's always going to be, the circumstances will always occur where people will want to kill each other because that the land is under huge contention. And we did see that, Simon, in the past few days. Just on Wednesday there were some people that decided that they would pick up the gun again, and they would go and they would try to murder an off-duty policeman in front of a lot of children.
He's still alive at the moment, as we know, isn't he? Luckily.
Absolutely. So back to what you're saying in the news right now is you're seeing, you're hearing talk of this new protocol deal, in where let me explain something. Recently, there at the start of December, we were in the Supreme Court in London, and we took the British government to court. And the reason why we took them to court was because that there are certain things that was agreed even back in the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, that, well, Northern Ireland, there could be no constitutional change in Northern Ireland until that there was a referendum put to the people. That would be number one. And number two, what makes up the United Kingdom and what gives rise even to the Parliament in the United Kingdom is this thing called the Act or Acts of Union, in where that in Article 6 of that Act of Union, well, what happens is that provides for trade, and that provides for citizens' rights in Northern Ireland. Now, in the Supreme Court, it was successfully argued by the government. We didn't win the case, but it was successfully argued by the government that the government is sovereign. The Westminster Parliament is sovereign, and what they can do is that they can change the law in whatever way they want. Now, when they change the law, what they've actually done is that they've done huge damage to this thing called the Belfast Agreement. I mean, if they've changed the law, if there's now not a referendum that is required, well, then the Belfast Agreement stands in tatters at the minute, and there literally is no peace agreement. And now, to add further insult to the injury that they've already created, this is the Conservative government right now. Well, what they're doing is that they're steamrolling, they're about to try to steamroll a deal into place, which really facilitates one. It enhances one at the expense of the other. And I can say without fear of contradiction that what's coming on Monday, we've seen sight of this deal. What's coming on Monday, well, it's not going to be conducive to replacing Northern Ireland back into the United Kingdom as fully fledged members. Now, Simon, there is several ways in which that we could deal with this, and there's several ways in which that we could have I'm going to say, an equitable settlement in where that everybody could feel satisfied. But it just seems that the politicians are hell bent on pushing into place. I'm going to say a deal which would suit globalization and not the people of Northern Ireland.
And your thinking of that is to break up the union. Individually, we're a lot weaker.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You see, we see this as the deal that if it's pushed through on Monday, and if our political leaders, if they go for it, and I have every reason to think that they probably will, they're more set on keeping their own feet on the globalist table than they are actually looking after the people that has put them in place to serve and protect them.
That's also on both sides, isn't it? Sinn Féin of that.
100%. 100%. Yeah, the people are being played on both sides is basically what we're saying. Now, where the danger lies here is that if this deal is done, well then, you see, the Act of the Union speaks about, and this provides for citizens' rights and citizens, for trade right around the United Kingdom. And if that they say, well, look, sorry, Northern Ireland, you are half in the EU and half in the UK. There's going to be EU customs and regulatory border in Larne and Belfast and Warrenpoint. That's on the Irish Sea. Well, then what's going to happen is that the SNP will demand exactly the same once the ink is dry on the settlement, and that's what it is. It's going to be a full and final settlement should you be able to get this deal over the line.
You can't go back at all.
Once
it's in place, that's it.
Yeah, that's normally the case whenever it's suiting globalization. However, we were told by Tony Blair. And Simon, could we play that small clip that I have just up on the screen there? Because that clip actually is just what we're speaking about.
In June 2016, we had the referendum, and that expressed the will of the people, but the will of the people isn't something fixed or unchangeable. If the circumstances change, the will can change, the views can change. We knew that we voted to leave the European Union, but we didn't yet know the new relationship. We've got the right to rethink. It's not that we have to rethink, but we've got the right to rethink if we want to. So when we see this new relationship, and I think the new relationship will be one in which Britain is either trying to keep very close to Europe, in which case we'll have to obey Europe's rules, but we'll have lost our seat at the table of decision making, or alternatively, it'll be very far from Europe, in which case the damage to Britain economically will be quite significant. I think when people see this new relationship, they're going to ask themselves again the question, well, is this really worth it? I think we also have to deal with the underlying reasons why people voted for Brexit. Now, those reasons were often to do with issues like immigration, concerns about immigration, concerns about communities left behind, economic and cultural alienation. I think you have to deal with those reasons. Now, some of that can be dealt with by Europe also coming forward and saying, look, the circumstances that gave rise to Brexit in Britain are also circumstances that obtain in a lot of Europe as well. In many ways, Europe's become a kind of lightning rod for a whole lot of anxieties and concerns that people have that really aren't concerns that are about Europe, but are about people's worry, which is very real, that they've lost control over their own lives, lost it culturally through forces of immigration, lost it economically through forces of globalization. And my point is that the political leaders have got to respond to those anxieties and not end up in a situation where a kind of populism that rides the anger but doesn't provide the answers takes control. And this is the risk in Britain, but frankly you can see this all over the Western world. And Brexit is merely part of that movement in the West that's a big reaction against this process of globalization. And we've got to take account of it and deal with the underlying reasons for it, because otherwise, if we end up obstructing globalization, or for example, Britain pulls itself out of Europe as a result of these worries, we'll just do ourselves long-term damage.
What a legend. Not. Right. I'll take that down a second. So you're going to change that. So, or you got some other stuff, but he and the rest of the European Union made sure that as soon as we left, that we would get the roughest deal going and that we would suffer so that nobody else would dare think about doing this from the European Union. And also it would make the Remainers be able to go, look, we said it'd be bad. It's bad. You did this. But the truth is no fair crack at the whip. And they're using Northern Ireland as a lever to scare the bejesus out of people. They're using it as if you don't do our bidding, we will punish these people. It's a bit like the person who's not strong enough to bully that one, so he picks on their friend or whatever. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, you will suffer financially in any case at the moment because you've got more checks. It costs more to get stuff to you, so it makes it harder for business to prosper, and it makes so many other things harder. And yet you're not a fully fledged member of the United Kingdom with that visible wall down through the middle, are you?
Yeah. Just interested in that clip where he says that the people had concerns. They were real concerns. So there was an admission from Tony Blair where he said that people are losing out culturally because of forces of immigration, is what he said.
They're making it happen.
And that is a fact. That is a fact. But you see, there he's admitting that people have these concerns, but yet we see people like him and people directed by him actually suggesting that you're far right if you have those concerns. So there was an admission from Tony Blair with reference to the problems that people do actually feel, and they feel real. So back to what's happening right now is that if this deal goes through, you'll have the Scottish, the SNP demanding exactly the same as Northern Ireland, and you'll have Drakeford and Wales demanding exactly the same. Yep. And you see, this is what it was all about. It was about one or two things. The entire, I'm going to say, fabricated problem over the Northern Ireland and Brexit. And what it was all about was either one or two things. It was causing the circumstances whereby that Northern Ireland would broke away, Wales and Scotland would demand the same, yep, or that everybody will be back into the EU, hook, line and sinker. And that still is a strong possibility in the future.
With a lot less strength than we had before, we'll have a higher amount we'll have to pay in, and we'll have less say. Which, if we ended up back in the European Union, it would have been the worst thing that could happen anyway, right? And not just that, the moment that, say, for instance, Great Britain joined, they'd enact that where they take your sovereignty away. You don't need that anymore. We're in charge of that. And huge changes would happen because you wouldn't be allowed to fly the Union flag. I mean, I know there's been problems anyway, hasn't there, over the hall, but down the south, they wouldn't be allowed to fly the tricolour. We wouldn't be allowed to fly any flags over here, but the EU flag. And you would not believe how quickly it would start heading towards what looked like a totalitarian state from our past. So it's the worst possible case for us to rejoin. But at the moment, if we don't rejoin, they're going to punish you lot.
Yeah. And if I could just really impress upon people that this is easily sorted out. In fact, there was a document that was brought forward by a crowd called the Centre for the Union. And the document that was brought forward and the strategy for solving this is so simple that a child could have written it. I mean, the entire problem is that the EU are saying that they do not want goods coming from the United Kingdom into the EU single market. So therefore, there has to be checks on the goods to ensure that they meet with the EU standards, let's just say. Now, what you'll find is that the UK goods, really, they do meet with European standards. So again, it's really a non-argument. But what they're insisting is that there's checks on the goods in Larne, Belfast and Warrenpoint, physically lifting the border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland and transplanting it on the Irish Sea between Northern Ireland and
so United Ireland under other means.
Economically is what it is now. So again, it's a land grab, but it's easily sorted. I mean, if I could say to people that what was in that document from the Centre for the Union, and we discussed it with the people that drew up some legal minds that drew up that document, is picture in your mind's eye a tunnel. This sorts the entire problem out, and an imaginary tunnel. And anyone that wants to trade from within the EU or to the EU, well, what they do is that they insert their goods into this imaginary tunnel and they make their declarations at the point of the tunnel, which allows for free trade to continue as per the Act of the Union, Article 6, right around the United Kingdom.
But that's what companies are doing here at the moment already, sort of.
Of course,
you have to go through the paperwork, make sure you get down the docs. The paperwork's already been done back home, and you've agreed it, and then you go across. That's how it works.
100%. You see, so that's how simple it is. But they don't want the simple solution. And it seems that the Conservative government don't want a simple solution. And it seems like even our DUP are not arguing for a simple solution. One of the things that I'm going to say is that I've been long enough around politics to understand is that we're being edged ever so closer to globalization and everything that goes with it. And what you'll find is that your politicians, whilst that they pay lip service to the problems that you're having, they continue to do the stupid things which allows for you to be nudged ever closer into this globalist world, let's just say. Now, our own DUP, what they did was they drew up 7 tests for any deal that would be coming forward. And you may have heard last night, Simon, I seen you on the live chat when I was discussing this, but the tests are written in what I would like to call constructive ambiguity. And what do I mean when I say constructive ambiguity? Well, they're written in a way that they could be interpreted by anyone to mean different things.
And this key point is important because historically, when the Good Friday Agreement was written up, they did exactly the same thing. They argued in the back. For the loyalist, it means this. For them down the south, it means this. For these people, it means this. It can mean anything to anybody, but it doesn't actually. It isn't in black and white, and they're doing the same again here, aren't they?
Yeah. Our case against the government with reference to the protocol, we went to a judicial review, then we went on to an appeal to the judicial review in Belfast, and then we get right through to the Supreme Court in London. Now, our arguments were fine, but they judged the case on the law, and the law was that Parliament was sovereign and they can do basically anything. They can change anything, make laws, break laws, do whatever they want with laws. But what we did was that we brought out into the open the fact that what they did was that the British government and the Irish government, back whenever the Belfast Agreement was signed, what they did was that they forfeited their obligation to cause constitutional change in Northern Ireland. They said in a thing called the Northern Ireland Act 1998, Article 1, specifically it says that there couldn't be constitutional change in Northern Ireland without a referendum being put to the people. But now that the Supreme Court has actually said, well, the British government can change that if they want. So what they've did is that they've changed the premise of the Belfast Agreement. Now, this is what we wanted to talk about, Simon, and you and I have both noticed it and talked about this in the past few days, that the Belfast Agreement, it was admitted by Tony Blair's chief aide, a guy called Jonathan Powell, that the Belfast Agreement was written in constructive ambiguity. Now, as you will have heard there, a brief description by Simon, is that constructive ambiguity means that it could mean one thing to one side, it can mean another thing to another side, and everybody can claim victory in the words that is actually written. Now, what we actually see happening today, and myself and Simon, we've looked back at some old historical footage of what happened at the time of the Belfast Agreement, and we see history repeating itself. Would that be a fair way of explaining it, Simon, do you think?
Yeah, it's like literally putting the needle back to the beginning of the record. Just the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that was a pretty bad analogy because there's kids in here that won't have a clue what I'm talking about. But anyway, it is literally just reading off the same script and going through the same motions. And if you do go through the same motions on this particular thing, well, unionists will end up crapping out, to be quite blunt.
Yeah. So what we see is that we see the leader of the DUP at the minute, a guy called Jeffrey Donaldson. We've been looking back at some historical footage of Jeffrey. And what we see is that Jeffrey walked out of the talks, the Belfast Good Friday Agreement talks, because he wasn't happy that unionists were going to be sold out. But isn't it interesting that Jeffrey is the man that is in these? Well, he's not in the talks, but he's certainly outside the talks at the minute, and he's privy to the information that is coming from the talks. And yet Jeffrey Donaldson is minded to compromise Northern Ireland's place from within the United Kingdom. And back then he wasn't. He walked away from it. So, I'm going to say 25 years later has actually changed.
Softened and rise up. Now, a lot can happen in 25 years that we won't ever know about, right? Yeah. But any amount of things can make a bloke change. And I wouldn't want to hesitate what they are. But all I will say is that pressure, finances, all sorts of things. But money is also another winner. But you can't say any of these. You can only say that he stood this way and now he's completely not.
Well, if I could put it like a set of scales, and this is how I'd explain it, is that, weigh who's more important to Jeffrey, or what's more important to Jeffrey. In that 25 years, Jeffrey has become, he's an MP in Westminster. He's on the Queen's Privy Council. He is Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. He is.
That always helps, doesn't it?
He is trade envoy to Cameroon. He is trade envoy to, and I don't be shouting at me if I get this wrong, but I think it's Egypt also. He is the director of the Centre for Democracy and Peace, which is a global affair, which I believe was actually originally funded by the CIA. And we could maybe do another stream about that.
I can believe it. I mean, the CIA had a massive part to play in Northern Ireland, didn't they? Right?
Yeah, well, I can say that because we have the proof. We can say that without fear of contradiction that is the case.
You got receipts.
So you're asking about what can change a man. Well, I don't know. I would say that a lot of those things that I mentioned not only could change a man, but has changed the man. So who's more important, or is the unionist people more important, or is Jeffrey's globalist credentials more important? I would say that certainly the what Jeffrey looks like on the world stage is more important to Jeffrey than the unionist people of Northern Ireland. And I would say exactly the same for Rishi Sunak. It's what Rishi looks like, or what Boris looks like, is more important in globalist eyes than it is for his own people, really.
A lot of people forget where they come from when they've been away from the back streets for a long time. But here's the thing. There's a lot of people that died on both sides. And I don't get it. I mean, right, let's play devil's advocate here and talk about the Provos, right, or Sinn Féin. How many of them died for a united Ireland, right? Now, they didn't get a united Ireland yet, but that's what they're heading towards. And I think personally that the Union, the European Union, will do its best to give it to them temporarily, and they'll have it for 5 minutes. And then the European Union will snatch it back along with the sovereignty of every other country if it went that way. But the other thing to mention, if you care so much about the people, the Catholics and the land and all the rest of it, this is Sinn Féin. Why would you wreck the plans of a peace process back in the day? Secondly, why would you encourage the level of immigration going on down the south that they now want to push up past the border, don't they? The border which now doesn't exist in some people's eyes, right? I don't get it. So many people died on both sides to achieve a goal which, to be honest, well, the Provos didn't get their goal, but I've got to say that the loyalists are going to lose their goal if basically the European Union gets their own way. But either way, why would you welch on everything that your people have fought for? Like, say, this Donaldson guy. How many people died in the past to try and keep Northern Ireland part of the Union? And he knows that what he's doing will lead to what we're saying, which will be eventually United Ireland under at this rate, a European Union. I couldn't think of a worse thing.
Yeah,
I just
they're doing this. They're doing this in a very, very clever way, Simon. And let me just perk myself up as I explain to the people. We are all being conned. We are all being swindled. That's no matter why you're a Republican, a loyalist, a nationalist, a Protestant, a unionist, whatever. We are all being conned. That's no matter where you come from, England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. And really, the end game is globalization. So they talk now, they've changed the language from a United Ireland, and what they're calling it now is a new Ireland. Now, we know that when you go into the south right now, that what you're seeing, and we have many friends down there.
There's a new island down there, isn't it? Sorry, well, I shouldn't. It's awful.
But this has to be explained so that people can understand that, listen, we shouldn't be fighting with each other. We should be fighting them. Seriously? That is taking everybody's nationality away, everybody's birthright away. This is the way that things should be actually done. Now, there has to be a certain degree of standing up for your own people, because you have to bring people with you. You have to fight your own corner, and I believe that everybody has to do that. But when it gets to the point whereby that this so-called new Ireland, where they're railroading us into economically, it's not a new Ireland, because you're not allowed to be Irish in Ireland anymore, Simon.
Well, I've got it here. There was I think an Iranian woman down the south, and she doesn't like the Southern Irish, and Ireland is for everybody, especially the people of colour. What the fuck are you on about, you stupid woman? But they're going to, because people down the south are so worried about looking racist and prejudiced and all the rest of it, that they've pushed back, but they haven't come out for so long. Now they've got all of the rape that's going on with men and women, by the way. It's not just the women they're going for the men as well. They've got the looting, the stabbing, the battles on the street, and also the Guardian stood by watching bad things happen and not doing a damn thing. They're watching liberals driving into crowds of protesters because they're racist. They've also, the Guardian have got together with other organizations to make sure that if you start reporting on this in a bad way, say for instance, John went down there, poked a camera in somebody's face and said, "Hi, where do you come from? What you up to?" He could get effectively 12 months for that under the ruling that's not entirely legal as far as we can understand, but they'll still try it, right? I've noticed in the last week and a half, they really started coming down on protesters over there, over here, and it's basically, they've had it today, they've had it last week. They are now going to try and stop people like us talking about things like this, because you're getting in the way of their great globalist dream. Well done to the Irish for leading the way, pushing back. Yeah. And the Liverpudlians, let's not forget them. It's Liverpool they did it up in. But the point being here is they're going to flood Southern Ireland, and then they'll just push them straight up through the border.
It's already happening, Simon. So if we can just again go back to this new Ireland concept, and now we know, I mean, you go into Ireland and you're not allowed to be Irish. You've been called far right, fascist, racist, all of those things. If you try to stand up for your nationality, that's what's happening right across the board. So here's the thing: is that there can't be a united Ireland. There can't be a new Ireland. Yes, a new Ireland, but well, again, that's constructive ambiguity, because what a new Ireland means is nothing that represents the Irish. That's what that means. The same way as in the New England, let's just say, or the new Northern Ireland, well, it's nothing that represents the indigenous folk that have a birthright to actually be on that spot of land, and that's what's happening right across the globe. Simon, if we can just touch on what you just said there, and well, let's go for it. Let's just explain to the people, because we know enough about it to talk about it. Now, we came across something just in the past few weeks. when we've been doing some research. And what we noticed is that there's this thing called the National Union of Journalism.
Let me see if I can. Have you got a copy? Otherwise, I'll see if I can get a copy in a minute.
I don't have it here on my screen, unfortunately. I'm on a different computer.
Bear with a second. I'm going to try and do something which is technical, so that means I will fail.
I talk away. You look okay.
Yeah, you crack on, and I'll have a look at it. Right.
So we came across this thing called it's a new guidelines for the National Union of Journalism. And people, listen very, very carefully to this here, because this
I've got it for you here, mate. Right.
Good
so
man.
I will screen share it.
This is the method. This is the method by which that what they are doing is that they've taken control of your journalists and the people on the media. Now, who has taken control of the people, the journalists and the people in the media? Let me explain. The National Union of Journalism, probably some Marxists at the top of it, has teamed up with the United Nations. And what they have teamed up for would be to create a guidelines for your journalists and your BBC presenters and your RTE presenters and so on and so forth, for when they are dealing with anybody that is deemed an asylum seeker, let's just say. Well, if they're dealing with anybody, they've been given guidelines explaining, defining what actually is an asylum seeker. And whenever that you read through the guidelines, well, it just seems that anyone could be an asylum seeker. I'll give you an example. If someone on the live chat here had a strong word with somebody in their household, you can go and claim asylum under these guidelines in Ireland or anywhere tomorrow. So really what they're doing within these guidelines is that they're saying that you have to have the permission of the asylum seeker to talk to them. So you have to first and foremost get their authority so that you can talk to them.
Let me get to that part, right? Because I'm going to show you that as well, right? So if how do I do this? Stop sharing and then present. Screen. I'm going to go to. I'll try. Let me see if I can move that across, because I didn't have a lot of luck the last time. No, that's not it. That's not it. Let's see if that is it. No, it's not. Okay, I'm going to have problems, but basically I will have to read it out to you, right? So you go down through and I'll present this again, right? That reporting. So you read down through and it tells you to, if you want more details, click here. All right, we'll click there. All right. So when you go down through, it's literally in the first bit. Where was it put? Yeah, things you can't do and all the rest. I've got to find it a second. So bear with, because there it is. People resettled in Ireland. So I've just got to find that part. I think it's up here. Anyway, look, the long and the short of it is, right, is that if you report on somebody without their consent, you're going against the rules that were set out in the temporary protection is an extraordinary measure that provides urgent and temporary protection for refugees. It was introduced in the European Union for the first time in 2022 to deal with the unprecedented numbers of people fleeing the war in Ukraine. The International Protection Act 2015 does not specify or specifically protect the anonymity of does not of resettled refugees or the BOTP, whatever that is, as a result. Okay, but it does go on, and when you look, it says, hang on a minute, let me get to the right part, because otherwise I'll f this right up. I'm looking for the prison. Here we go. If in any matter a published or broadcasted in contravention of subsection 2 of the following persons shall be guilty of an offence and liable on summary conviction to a Class A fine or a term of imprisonment for 12 months. So it says here, point A, because I want to get that point. A person shall not, without the consent of an applicant, publish in written publication available to the public or broadcaster, or cause to be so published or broadcasted information likely to lead members of the public to identify a person as an applicant. Basically, the average Joe will not be able to get this paperwork together. So I couldn't go up to somebody who is a migrant and get him to say, yes, I'm quite happy to be interviewed. That's not enough. It has to go through more. And if you don't go through the right chains, what they're saying is the average Joe out in the street who wants to report on a migrant could land himself in a whole world of pain.
Yeah.
So those go on.
Let's look at the repercussions of what you've just read there. Now, what we're saying here, this was a document that was constructed by the National Union of Journalism in Ireland. By the way, it also has UK on it there, Simon, if you notice, because the NUJ is in the UK, and that will be winging its way to us very, very soon. So the implications of such guidelines for first for journalism, that would be whether they be BBC, RTE, whatever TV channels, whatever
legacy media,
mainstream media. The implications is that even if, let's say, for example, we had another situation just like what happened to Lee Rigby, for example, okay.
Yep.
It seems seemingly the journalist couldn't even go and approach the guy or dig into his history if he was an asylum seeker. This is the way that this thing is being drawn. Now, what it does is it goes on to further define, again, I think you read it, but some of it is that ordinary people, if you've got a camera, if you were creating content for a YouTube channel or whatever, you have to get the agreement of the asylum seeker. Now, even if you do that, reading into this very, very carefully, even if you were to get the agreement from the asylum seeker to talk to them, well, the system could actually deem that what you have done is that you have put that person's life in danger. And then they are saying that you're subject to, you could be liable to 12 months imprisonment or a huge fine, or if you're a media group, even a bigger fine. Now, there's a huge problem with this, because when you look at it objectively, what you begin to realize is that they have stuck a sticker over your media's mouths, the mainstream media's mouths, and they're literally not allowing them to talk about anyone that comes into your country for whatever reason, no matter why they are uncontrolled, uncontrollable, unidentifiable in their nature.
Is this why you think for quite a few years now, when there's been crimes committed by people who were not indigenous to this country, is the best way I can put it, that the names were never brought forward? I mean, say, for instance, Joe Bloggs does something down the road, right? They'll print his name, no problem. But if his name isn't quite like Joe Bloggs, often's the case, they won't give you a physical description of the person. They won't give you a name or anything. They just say a man.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes it hard to apprehend a guilty suspect when you can't give us any sort of details on him. But I was always thinking they were doing it to hide something else, and I still do. But that also could lead into it. But this is another thing.
Yeah.
You could be any color to be a refugee, can't you?
Yeah, it's to stop you talking about globalization and the illegal placing of mass immigration into your country, and the way that they defined it, and this is the harsh part about that document, the way that they defined who can qualify as a refugee is, as I say, anyone. I could, as I say, have a fight with my young son this evening, and I could claim refugee status in Ireland under those definitions. Now, there was something here that I noticed that somebody said here. I can't see it, the live chat's moving that quick, but there was someone that said, well, there is no free press, and that is a very, very, I mean, that's where that's the hammer hit with the nail, or hitting the nail of the head, let's just say. I mean, you need a free press, so you do, for in order for even democracy to continue. And when you don't have a free press, well, you can't hold your politicians to account.
You know, we used to create merry hell about how bad the Russians were, how bad communist China is, and look at all the things they're doing. Well, we are going in that direction.
Yeah, definitely, Sam.
I mean, this digital ID, right? We're all got to have digital ID. But I guess they won't have to have digital ID because it'll infringe on their whatever, or they might then be, or maybe this 2015 thing will, in some word salady way, as we talk about, I can't be able to go up to them and find out exactly who they are, because then I might be able to tell somebody else who they are, so that they walk around anonymous. Maybe, I don't know, but as most of them throw their identification overboard or before whatever border it is that they want to go through next, because the NGOs give them all the information that they need. And incidentally, the NGOs are on millions and millions, right? So they tell these people exactly from point A, which is wherever it is they come from, how to get through every space to get to wherever it is they want to go. There was a guy who was a crook in London, right? And he came from, where was it? Somewhere like Ukraine or something like that. And he admits he was a scammer, right?
Yeah.
And he says, I found out it was going to be a lot easier to get a visa in Ireland. And I think I'm going to like it here. And this guy was like blatantly honest, no shame at all. And you think, we have just encouraged a scammer, a criminal, to move his way across Europe, use all our benefits until he gets to somewhere he quite fancies and he knows he can rob them because it won't say a damn thing. And then he's going to settle there. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Which leads us to another thing, really. In the United Kingdom, I mean, we've learned all about constitutional law as a result of our fight against the British government with reference to the entire Brexit shenanigans that has been foisted upon Northern Ireland. And in looking into things like the Common Travel Area, which has been around for a very long time, which allows for people to move around these islands freely, you know, from Ireland to England, Scotland and Wales, Northern Ireland and vice versa. That's what is allowed. And what also happens is that these people that are coming into Ireland, well, then they're being dispatched to all around the United Kingdom is the reality.
They can get a bus, can't they? They can get literally a bus up into the north and then just chip off straight across.
Yeah, and they can claim benefits, Simon, you know, whenever that you look into it. Yes, and you know, they're qualified for all sorts, and it tells you in that document that you're reading there, actually, all about the certain things that they're allowed to do. So let's make something absolutely clear, because no doubt there'll be a lot of people that'll come to watch this that'll think that, well, you know, is this one of these far right channels with people here who just don't want anyone around the place that doesn't belong to the place? Well, that's not actually the case. I mean, as for myself, and I can speak for Simon also, is that I mean, I have associations with a lot of people from Cameroon who have came here the legal way, who work here, who contribute to the society. And I would fill this country, well, I don't literally mean overburden the society, but certainly fill this country with the type of people that I know that come from, say, Cameroon. But I'm really hell-bent against the uncontrolled, uncontrollable, unidentifiable and unquantifiable immigration that is being foisted upon everyone at this point, because what that does is that overburdens your services. You can't get housing, it puts the cost of your rents up, and it causes all sorts of problems in your country. You know, like we can't even house the people that are here. There's a lot of homeless people, and yet these people are coming and they're getting put ahead of the people that are here that have real needs. And that's the bit that any ordinary individual couldn't stand for.
It just pisses me off. I mean, you've got old people that can't put the heating on. You've got people on the streets that have served the country. I've said this loads of times. You've only got to go through the city. Well, actually, you'll find some of them have moved out of the parts of the city because they're not allowed to even be homeless. But, you know, there it is. I know people who have been unemployed for a little while. Somebody I know quite personally went to sign on because they've been self-employed. They can't backdate it. They can't get any benefits, right, until any previous. So that's the rent and everything else. And literally, they're making them climb through hoops. And in the end, the person just went, you know what, poke it up your ass, because it would have been not so bad if they were making everybody do that, right? If it was equal. But you know that there's people that have just gone on a boat and ended up in Dover that hate us, right? They don't like us. They want to simulate, right? They've got no time. I mean, look at the way they treat. I mean, you've seen all the video footage of them literally exposing themselves and the things that go with that, right? Bus stops, car windows, all sorts. I mean, it's just grim, right? And then the chatting up of the young girls, and then the way they abuse people, and the racism against white people is going through the roof, right? Everybody's seen it. But these people, they get looked after lovingly every step of the way. Buses laid on, taxis when you get there, by the way. 3 meals a day, heating, your phone paid for, money in your bank, cash card, all the rest of it. What happened to the old people that paid in all their life? They don't get any of this. And it shows the level of hatred from the globalists towards the little people. It couldn't be any more transparent. And for me, I don't know about you, it seems to just keep poking us, thinking, when are these people going to kick off? Because the moment we go off, right? That's when they can bring in the army, shut us down and keep us shut down. They're bringing new rules that'll never go. I mean, you remember going back years and years ago, there was a thing called internment, wasn't there? And there was a reason for that. Now, that is not something that they couldn't bring back. They did it before. They could do it again on different reasons.
Simon, martial law is the terminology that is used. And what they can do is, let's say, for example, that people were to kick off and they were not peacefully protesting. I'm glad to see that largely, even in Ireland at the minute, that they are peaceful, because they'll do more damage when mass numbers come out. Because what happens is the politicians and the would-be politicians and the people that have to go forward for election the next time, if there is numbers on the streets and they're protesting peacefully, well, those said politicians will literally crap themselves, and they begin to realize is that they have to actually work for the people that has the power to either put them in place or not put them in place. Simon, I want to draw people's attention to what's written behind me here. If you can just read
it. The gift of freedom, like a torch, has been handed down. We will be the generation to let the torch of freedom go out.
Will we be the generation to let that torch of freedom go out? You know, and a lot of the things that is being done right now is aimed at taking away our freedoms. And as you say, that what they want to do is that they want to poke us to the stage whereby that there is rioting all across the UK, all across Ireland. And then that's when they come in with their martial law. They insist that people can't be on the streets after a certain time, and you're not allowed to protest, and you're not allowed to question this, that, or the other. So
they've done it twice already, haven't they?
Yeah.
And that was just, I mean, let's not go into what happened up in the north, well, where you come from, because they actually did. You couldn't come out this time, but there was rioting going on and all sorts, right? Yeah. But over here, we got locked down for something which is starting to look more and more like it wasn't anywhere near as bad as they were making it out to be. But was that a test? We fell for it. We did it.
Let's go back to our Brexit days, and I know that there's not much time left on the street.
Brexit! I tell you what, we were so long coming, thought we actually got a result, and then what?
So all of those times that we would have stood, say, at Whitehall, at those rallies, you know, and you and I were talking about this the other day. What they used to do was that they used to switch off our capability to live stream.
The antenna, they'd reduce it down, and there was a van there. Do you remember the van? We called it the van death. Yeah. You got anywhere near there, there's all these screens inside it. It was CCTV, but there was things on the roof, and every time you go, the phone would just, or your phone would do this, and everything. There was some weird shit happening right back then. But I went out on the first protest I said I was going to go out on. I had 2 YouTube channels. Both of them got blocked the night before. That's coincidental.
Yeah. And that you witnessed it. That's what happened to me also, is that they would have blocked me, say, on a month or a Friday. The demo, say, was on a Saturday, and they give me it back again on the Monday.
It's literally doing that to you. It's like, we can do what we like with you. How do you feel? Yeah. I mean, it's like my channel was doing really well over Christmas, right? We were gaining thousands, and all of a sudden they go, yes, he's talking about things we don't like. And that's it. Put you in the ghost. I mean, it's slowly climbed to between over 4 channels to 482 at the moment, right? When it was working well, and I didn't seem to be in the gulag, we've had 1,400 on here. In the old days, before 2017, I could get 2,500 on a stream, no problem at all. As many others could get much, much more. But as they've changed how we can communicate with each other, because they want trusted media, they don't want people like us coming out and causing shit. So they've changed the algorithms, they've changed all sorts of other things. And there is a thing called 77th Brigade. You might have heard of it. These are people that are in the army that were supposed to spy on people outside of this country that might become a threat to the safety of this country. What they were told to do was turn it around on the people. I think it was prior to the first lockdown. Yeah. They spied on anybody who was anti the narrative. That's as far as I'll go. They had their eye on 10,000 people. 10,000 people that were speaking out at the time. You know, who was on that list? And that's just allegedly. But now what they're doing is they'll be in contact with every big social media platform with a list of people that don't want to get out. These people are a threat to where we're going. And you'll just find out that you go nowhere. I mean, look at your Facebook channel. Yeah. What exactly were you saying of any rest there?
I didn't say anything, and I will give you two examples that has happened in the last month or so. What I find is that whenever there's going to be an announcement or a deal that is coming or pending, I get banned from Facebook. And what they said that they banned me from Facebook for was that I found a little clip, I published it, and it was about a place. On the day of the Enniskillen bomb, there was two bombs. Now, if the second bomb had went off, we wouldn't have been talking about Enniskillen. We would have been talking about a place called Tullyhullen. So I found an old clip of a policeman, and what he was doing, he was talking to a BBC reporter, and he said that on that day, if that bomb had went off, what they were going to kill was a whole generation of people from within that village, from the Boys Brigade, from the Girls Brigade, and several children's groups. Now, if you think of the implications of that bomb was on the border in a place called Tullyhullen above Enniskillen near Donegal. Now, if they had wiped out those children, there was nobody to populate going forward. So they would have literally, it would have been ethnic cleansing to its nth degree. Now, I didn't even go into that. All I did was publish what the policeman was saying, because the BBC man said to him, "Are you saying that they were targeting children?" He says, "Yeah, children were legitimate targets in their eyes." That's what the policeman said. Now, all I did was to publish that, and they said that it went against their rules. So what they've did is they give me a ban for a month, but then the deal didn't actually go through. So then they banned me for another month for nothing. So now that I can't get access to the Facebook channel until sometime next month, but it'll not be until after the deal.
Do you remember in Enniskillen itself, even Jerry Adams thought that was a bad thing. So he said, right, what he thought and what he said, we don't know. But men, women and children are fair target, because do you remember when they came over to the mainland during the 70s and they had the letter bomb? So they were putting these bombs in the post box, and just random targets. They weren't military targets. They weren't targets of significant interest or whatever. And there was no warning. So they were just taking out innocent people. Now, that was the Balcombe Street gang, which was also guilty for the Guildford pub bombing, which innocent people went to prison for God knows how many years. Jerry Conlon, his dad died in there. But anyway, there was the Birmingham Six. They were all innocent. But that was a pub bomb. How can you say that there's got any significant military target there? It wasn't, and that was the way it was. But anyway, long before I was born,
I would have had the privilege of interviewing a lot of those people. I was working through a victims group here in Northern Ireland, and they were quite, they were good enough to allow me access to a lot of the victims. And we've done several interviews with people like, and I'm going to mention a few. There was one called the Chelsea bus bombing. And what happened was that there was a group of the Irish Guards who were based in England. And they stood outside the palace, and they looked after the Queen, so to speak. And they done their little marches and so on. You know what happens outside Buckingham Palace. And there was this guy called John Radley. And there was a day in where that they were he was rushing back to the barracks, and there was two buses coming back to the barracks, and he explains it that their bus went a different route and overtook the other bus, and they were the first into the street where the Chelsea barracks was. So what actually happened is that they were driving down a street. There was someone on a scaffold not too far away with a command wire. And what they did was they let off a bomb. Now, this is what you were speaking about there, Simon, is that as it went off, the bomb was packed with nails. And John Radley explains what happened to him is that there was nails stuck in his head. He didn't die. People did die. But what they did, they seen that there was women and children in that street. And what they did was they killed a young Irish guy. So they did a young lad, in that bomb. So there, and what was actually said at the time was clearly the person that was in charge of the command wire letting that bomb off, well, he would have seen that there was women and children there when he let that bomb off as that bus passed. So yeah, that was the type of things that they were doing. And
the Balcombe Street gang, they used to get hardened, toughened bolts because the other ones were melting. Yeah. So they make sure that they wrap the bomb in all these bolts, right? And they wrap it up and then whatever. And then these bolts fly out in bits or in whole, and they spin, and they're going at the speed of God knows whatever, and they just literally take legs off, arms off, all sorts.
What John Radley said about the nails, he says they took time to bend all the nails to make them like boomerangs, and that's what you were just saying. And you know, I mean, that's how evil that these people were. But that backfired, because they killed, from my recollection, and that was two Irish people.
Yeah.
So they killed two of their own people in that one bomb. And you know, that happened several times. I mean, here's one saying that I could talk. Can I play another clip here for people? Now, this is, to me, this must be the most telling clip of the entire Troubles. And I'm going to say to people, prepare yourself to be emotionally traumatized whenever that you see this here.
So is there any blood and gore in it?
No, there's not. There's not. But it's just what happened, and it's the kid's mother that is speaking. I'll just let this lady tell the story, and we'll come back and we'll talk a wee bit about it afterwards. But there you go, Simon.
It was of no value. He was only 6 months, and it was of no value.
One day, someone did park a car here in front of Linton and Robinson, the hardware store in Derry Street. It faces Abercorn Square, the main square of Strabane. The day they parked the car over here, Mrs. Kathleen Jack went to do some shopping at Cathcart. That's that boarded-up shop next to the Soldier over there. And she parked her baby carriage in front of it with her son Alan in it. Well, that car there blew up. In so doing, it blew up Michael Bradley's classic bar, filled with people, but remarkably no one was killed. But one person was killed that day, 5-month-old Alan Jack, sitting in his baby carriage.
A policeman said, you better move along fast because there's a bit of trouble happening. So I just didn't know what I was speaking about. I didn't understand. And I just moved along as quickly as I could, and the next explosion just happened. And Alan was just killed outright in the pram. I didn't get any compensation because she said that the child was of no value. He was only 6 months, and it was of no value.
How do you come to that conclusion? Now, a thing about Strabane is it was one of the most bombed out, blown up parts of Northern Ireland. Also, it was also, I think, over 70% of the inhabitants of Strabane were on antidepressants, and that was back in the 70s. The mental health of the people was in tatters because there was a bomb going off every other day, it felt like to them. There was butchers that were bombed out, pubs that were bombed out, factories that were bombed out, shops that were bombed out. They were bombed out more than once as well. And you could go through it and it looked like Bosnia on a bad day. And yeah, these people, they had no value for their own, just no value for life.
The furtherance of that story that you just heard there with that little 6-month-old baby, actually, if you heard from the mother's lips, was that, I mean, the child was of no value. She got no compensation for the child. That was number one. And number two was that recently we had Michelle O'Neill, who is the leader of Sinn Féin here in Northern Ireland, say that there was no alternative to the likes of that baby being killed in that bomb. Wouldn't she have better, I mean, would she not have better been saying that, well, look, what happened was absolutely appalling and it shouldn't have happened, and we're in a different time, we're, you know, in peace times now, and we're going to ensure that that doesn't happen again. But no, there was no apology.
She justified it outright.
There was no alternative, is what she said. Now that sticks in anyone's throat, you know, it has to. And you know, again, I'm appealing to the people here, Simon, the people that's on the screen, and I know that there's people here from a nationalist background, even in Ireland, is that, you know, things that happen on both sides here in Northern Ireland, they're designed to keep people apart. They're designed so that people can't stand together, and they're designed that in whenever election time comes, and it's the same in most political situations, that what the respective political parties can do is that they can rally their support against the other side, and then the people never ever come together. But there's coming a time that we're going to have to come together if we're all going to protect the life that we had and the lifestyle that we had and the relative freedom that we've had, and if we're going to ensure that that freedom goes forward to the next generation.
You know me, I like a bit of a conspiracy occasionally, right? Because generally, a lot of the times they come true. I'm led to believe that the British government could have ended the Troubles a lot sooner through many different ways. But you know the way we're getting this. I mean, we've had it lately. Some woman got murdered, terrible, right? And that's all we're seeing. And when we're seeing that, there's something really bad going on over here that we can't see. We had the Gulf War that went on for ages, 1 and 2. We had years ago, before I was born, you were listening to the Vietnam War, but all the way through, we had years and years, all the time I can remember when I started watching the news from, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, right up until I was 18, maybe more. Northern Ireland, the Troubles. And we couldn't get our head around it over here, but it was just baffling to us. And it was something to watch and think, Christ, we're lucky. But while we were watching that, we couldn't see that what they were setting up, what they were doing, all the rest of it. And we didn't have the means that we do now to share knowledge with each other. But I truly believe that the Northern Ireland War, it made money for all the wrong people, and it took the attention away from people focused on Northern Ireland when there was other stuff going on. It also put a fear factor into people in England, as well as obviously all up and down Ireland. I just think looking back at it and all the history, I've done like thousands of hours of research on it because it interests me. I know for a fact that the British government could have brought it to an end a lot sooner, but they didn't. And you have to ask yourself why. And now we've got our latest war, which is good for globalism. I mean, if you think how much money, weapons that we've sent there that now need replacing, which we'll pick up the bill for, the taxpayer, right? Mm-hmm. And we need to raise the Cold War again because, well, apart from the fact Putin, as much as he's not my favorite character, and he's certainly, they've done stuff. They killed that bloke over here, didn't they, with poison from Russia? But so he's not. I'm not a great fan of Putin. But when he comes out and says, your people are trying to push degeneracy, they're trying to break down the fabric of society, and he starts naming all of the things that this country, the globalists, are doing to this country, you go, I can't argue with that. Kind of puts you in a weird. But because he's not allegedly part of that, and he's calling it out, then they've been pushing, is it NATO, ever closer? Because there was a gap, wasn't there, between Russia and, and they've been bringing right up to his door. But I can't help but think that the Cold War earned trillions. The Americans paid trillions for the Cold War. We paid billions, right? And it's great business for globalism. And it's a great way of keeping us all terrified, looking at the next thing, and our eyes looking completely in the wrong direction while we're getting the ass somewhere else. This is the latest thing. We were terrified out of our minds about COVID. We were terrified out of our heads about Brexit. Now we were going to get screwed. Now we're worried about the new Cold War coming and what could happen next. And look what's happening over there. And all the time at our place, yours, mine, south of Ireland, the whole of Europe, is filling up with people who have no time for us. They don't want to assimilate. They want to change the place. Well, actually, they don't think too much. They fight amongst themselves, because this is the other thing nobody's mentioning. When you bring in two different types of Islam who don't like each other, they fought each other when they were back there. Do you think they're going to give it up when they come here? Do you think they're going to change completely? Do you know what, old boy, let's put a shirt and tie on and go get ourselves a job, and we'll put all that nastiness aside. It does not happen like that, does it?
Yeah. I'm going to give a slight take on this Ukraine war. You and I have a mutual friend, or mutual friends, that are just back from Ukraine, have been in Ukraine for quite some time. And so we've got, I've had running commentary on a lot of things that is happening in Ukraine. And I have to say at the outset that I'm very, it's the people that I have sympathy with. I'm talking about the ordinary people in Ukraine. That whilst that Mr. Zed, without saying his name, I don't know whether your algorithms will pick it up here, but whilst Mr. Zed is running around the different parliaments, asking for money and weapons and all sorts of things to be sent to Ukraine, whilst that he's doing that, ordinary soldiers are on the front line trying to fight a war. And really, it's a bit like, say, trying to fight an army with pea shooters is the thing. Now, do I believe in the war? No, I believe that it should be stopped, and I believe that it could be stopped very, very easily. However, whenever there was a man on the radio yesterday, Simon, and he is a reporter, an older school BBC reporter, And whenever the new modern day reporter was saying that, well, the war's a year old, he says, hang on. He says, the war's not a year old. He says, I was there in 2014. He says, it's getting more exposure now than it was then, but it's been happening from back then. Now, I listen a lot to, and this is a good source. There's a guy called John J. Mearsheimer. He's an American professor from the University of California, from my recollection, and he speaks about global affairs. I mean, this is his game. He's a professor of that subject, and he was talking about the Orange Revolution in 2014 in Ukraine, in where that Ukraine had a prime minister, and that prime minister was overthrown, and Mr. Z was put in place in 2014. Yeah, Mr. Z was put in place in 2014, and ever since that day, then it's a bit like, say, Northern Ireland in that patch of land, Ukraine, that there is a lot of Russian speakers. There's a lot of people who are Ukrainian, and and it's kind of there's a battle for that land, even with the people there. Now, what Mr. Z done whenever he took over office was that he banned Russian speaking in schools and so on, and agitated against the Russians.
And the church.
Yeah, there you go. He done that also. Then, you see, there was a deal that was to be done with the previous Prime Minister of the Ukraine. And what happened was that the deal was to be done with the EU. And he turned the EU down, and he thought, well, there's a better deal being offered here by the Russians. And that's why that Mearsheimer says that he was actually pushed out of office. Now, there is this thing Mearsheimer says called the Monroe Doctrine. And the Monroe Doctrine is that really there's an unwritten rule, basically, that Eastern Hemisphere countries should not be on the borders of Western Hemisphere countries, and Western Hemisphere countries' powers should not be on the border of Eastern Hemisphere countries. When the Berlin Wall came down, he said that the unwritten agreement was then that there wouldn't be any, I'm going to say, any
there was a neutral zone, a buffer zone in between, wasn't
pushing
there?
Towards, yeah. There wouldn't be any pushing towards Russia. I mean, that's where it stopped. East Germany, West Germany, it stopped there. But then we've seen that Poland went, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia.
There is a political map where you can see them all starting to go, and you can see NATO creeping ever closer to Russia.
So NATO, EU expansionism, globalist expansionism, and that's exactly what's happening now. Mearsheimer also said that you remember the Cuban crisis, the missile crisis?
Well, when we gave up the weapons in Turkey.
Yeah, he said that could have caused nuclear war. I mean, he says America went ballistic whenever Russia was coming into Cuba with their missiles.
But they ring-fenced them with weapons. Do you know what I mean?
But now he says, well, look, put now the shoe on the other foot. He says, how do you think Russia feels that NATO and the EU are they have expansionist tendencies, and they're pushing towards Russia? They are breaking all the rules in the game, basically, by doing so. But what we're seeing, Simon, let's put no gloss on it. We're seeing global expansionism. We're seeing it here in Northern Ireland. This is back full circle to where we started, where they're using Northern Ireland to do one or two things: break up the United Kingdom, and then we'll be easy pickings, or to literally to force the entire United Kingdom to reverse the Brexit process, like we showed in the Tony Blair clip at the very, very start of this stream.
So at the moment, we're knackered. However, all you can do is tell as many people and hope they get. It just seems so hopeless at the moment to what we can do. When you bring a legal case against them, they lie and change the rules. If we were to take to the streets in a non-democratic manner, we'd be literally putting a rope around our own neck. They're very clever. They plan these things years and years and years in advance, and they've been doing this for years and years and years in lots of different countries around the world. They've toppled dictators, right? They've changed the political landscape of many countries that was going in the wrong direction, from Iran to wherever else. It doesn't matter. They will do their best to get what they want. But this time, whereas they were doing small fry, a bit here, a bit there, they're trying to do the entire West right? And they're running now because they're aware that with the aid of the internet, we've actually woken up. That's bad. So they now need to take away our ability as fast as they can for us to report to each other, and then they need to blind us, right? Metaphorically speaking. Then they can get on and do whatever they want, and we won't be able to contact each other. But it doesn't matter. People will always find a way, and these people are vastly ambitious. But this is a part of the reason for the European army. The European army would have been a way of, say, for instance, if you've got all the different groups. I mean, everybody thought Nazis were German. They weren't just German. There were people who were part of the Nazis were from different countries, and they expanded as they went through these countries. Yeah. Now, what would happen? Say, for instance, I want to put down a rebellion or something over in Ireland. Well, I'm not going to send the Irish people in to do this because they're going to have sympathies. With the European army, you would send somebody from, say, for instance, I don't know, Poland, or not even that, because they'd still be sympathetic, somewhere which has no association. They don't really care too much for the Irish or the English or whatever. They'll go in and take care of it, right? And this is the whole point of the European army, that if anybody, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, whatever it was, started to revolt, they send them in there in vast numbers and crush it.
Yeah. Wasn't there talk? There's two things I'm going to say here. There was talk again. Remember France, the Yellow Vest protests, that they brought the German army in to deal with the French people, and vice versa. They were sending French to Germany. Now, I can also remember one of the rallies that we attended, Simon, in Whitehall. I think that day there was 1 million people. There was two rallies. There was the UKIP rally. There was also the Nigel Farage rally on that day. Yep. And that day there was talk of that there was war games going on by NATO. And there was
European troops on our soil.
You remember they were driving up and down the motorways, but that was there just in case that I think that the people that was at the
in the same way that when the plane fell out the sky over Lockerbie, just so happened to be how many hundreds, I should have said, of FBI people on the ground very quickly. We just so happened to be in the UK at the time. Nothing is done by chance when it's bad.
Well, that day there was reports of those foreign soldiers up and down our motorways, or up and down the English
I've seen them. I've seen these bloody armoured cars, because I've seen these things that they say, oh, these vehicles are the new vehicles for dealing with crowd control, and they look very aggressive. And I saw them painted in the NATO colours on these, whatever it was, and I thought, oh. Anyway, I'm driving down in my truck, and I went, what was I doing? Yeah, I was amazed to see them on our soil, and I thought, they must just be showing us. There must be I let the paranoia go, but then, you
can't argue with that. No. That's what they do. That's what they were doing on that day, and that was people actually ascending upon London to demand their democratic right. I mean, 17.4+ million people voted to leave the EU dictatorial Ponzi scheme. And the government, to this date, they still have not let us leave. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. What we've got Bruno, Brexit in name only. We haven't got Brexit whatsoever. Didn't Liz Truss sign us back into the French design of a European political union? So we know that we're in that. Didn't Theresa May sign us up to PESCO, which was the military union? I mean, they're finding ways day and daily of bringing us back into the EU, and we're almost there.
And have you noticed how all of these ones that resign, right? They all leave. They were all Klaus Schwab's babes. They came in, did something quite awful, then leave, so that the next person goes, well, that wasn't me. I didn't do that.
So let's trace that back. David Cameron, he left.
Yeah. Well, they gave us the vote, but they put the fear on us so hard. They thought that nobody would ever vote for it. And then we did, and they went, well, didn't we scare the shit out of them enough? Oh, well, we'll have to think of something else here. So you got David Cameron, give us a vote and scared the living shit out of us. And we thought, it'll never happen. Well, it did. But yeah, he was an idiot, right? Then who do we have after Cameron? All right.
With Theresa May.
Oh, God.
Theresa May, then Boris Johnson.
Fields of Corn, right? Yeah. Great. And then, and incidentally, Theresa May was the one that lost all the details for Jimmy Savile. And her old man was apparently a bit tricky. And that she's covered up a lot of nonsense, right? So then we had Boris Johnson, right? Blithering fool. Everybody thinks he's nobody's fool. He's very clever, right? He did his bit. Thank you very much, Boris. You've just right up, right? After he got binned off, then we had less trust, right? And then she did a little bit and then jacked, right? Apparently brought down by the rest of it, but she's done enough work. And how many days was it? 40 something odd days? Very, very few days. But now she's on a pension for the rest of her life. She's not stupid. And then Who else we get after that?
Richie's. And he's not even elected, let's face it. And would you believe, I mean, that's what happened in the DUP. It was done in the DUP here also, is that there was a man called Edwin Poots that was elected. And within a few days, the media didn't like him, so he was put out. And Jeffrey Donaldson was, he had a coronation. He didn't even get voted into place. And he's now the leader of, see, that is the globalist chosen people. And I make no mistake about saying that there, because I say that in public here in Northern Ireland, that I certainly don't trust Jeffrey Donaldson. I believe Jeffrey Donaldson is working for Whitehall. I believe that he's working in the so-called national interest, and it just so happens that the so-called national interest isn't in the interest of the people
of the people of Ireland. I mean, we don't like the popular vote. Why?
Yeah.
But you see, these people who control us know best. We're just idiots. We don't really know what we want. And what actually we need to do is have everything taken off us, because that's for the best. And then we need to live as like people with our begging bowl, asking, can we go outside of a small area every now and again? And are we allowed to do this? And then we'll have a digital ID where we've got to be fully vaccinated and everything else to make sure that we comply with whatever. Otherwise, you can't have anything, right? And they've also changed the rules that in the old days, you used to be able to pass on money down through the family. As people died, they would inherit whatever. They've taxed that to death, and they've made sure that in a certain amount of time, you won't have passed it on down. But the rich people organize trust funds for each other and stuff like that. They've got offshore banking. They know they don't lose. They never lose. Yeah. But us, the little people, and we're going to be limited on where we can go abroad or travel. And they don't want us having access to this, and this. They've ruined the National Health Service. They've flooded the country with the people that will take over our culture, ruin our culture. We'll be outbred, right? And if the way things go, what didn't go checked, in 60 years' time, Europe will look like Africa or India or wherever. That's the way it's going to be.
They're doing it all over the world, and it seems to be, I call it tag team politics, and one does.
I'll call it the Kalergi plan myself, but there it is.
But they move off, so they do, and they allow for someone else to go in, and then that wasn't us, that was them, and then they do worse, and so on and so forth. But we're all headed towards the one end. What about that Jacinda Ardern? I mean, that was a good one, and now we see that Jimmy Cranky in Scotland is now done the same thing.
Can we just cut the doors down so we can look at people going to toilet? And can we put men in the girls' toilets? Because, well, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? And can we just cut the bits off these kids before they actually work out that it was a bad idea, right? And what I want to do is weaken people by telling them that they've all got some sort of something wrong with them, right? And we want to teach them that anal sex is a fucking contraception and all of these other things. And we need to teach the kids at the age of 4 that if an adult touches them and it feels good, you haven't got to talk about it. Right? Yeah. Now, I'm sorry. I'm not what you call a practicing Christian. I don't go to church, right? But I believe the man upstairs, and I see a lot of people go, "Oh, you're a fucking idiot." Yeah, whatever. You do you, I do me. But what I do know is I know evil when I see it, right? And globalism is about as evil as you can get. We have something here. Let's have a look.
I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election.
Good.
And that my term as Prime Minister will conclude no later than the 7th of February. This has been the most fulfilling 5.5 years of my life.
Financially.
It has also had its challenges, but I'm not leaving because it was hard. Had that been the case, I probably would have departed 2 months into the job. I am leaving because with such a privileged role comes responsibility. The responsibility to know when you are the right person to lead and also when you are not. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank.
Hang on, pause that a second. This is exact same script that Jimmy Cranky gave. Almost word for word.
It was, that's why I'm talking about it. So so we'll go again here, right? Yeah. Here we go.
That I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple. But I absolutely believe and know there are others around me who do.
Oh dear. So that's the trouble with the internet. You see, what you're able to do is you're able to say, "Didn't I hear that before?" When you hear Jimmy Cranky say it.
In the old days, when we were young, we could make an arsehole of ourselves on a night out, and the damage limitation was fairly small. You didn't have to worry too much. Yeah. Although word did get around, he was drunk and fucking singing or whatever. Big deal, right? But now you can go and make an absolute wazaki yourself, and it's out there forever.
I'm going to give you another clip, and we're going to be closing soon, no doubt, because I'm going for a.
Yeah, and I've got work in the morning at stupid o'clock, so I've got to get up.
But no, it's been really, really nice being here. But I want to play one from our own Jeffrey Donaldson. Now, Jeffrey is the defender of the Union here in Northern Ireland, and he's out there fighting the good fight and ensuring that we're not going to be hived off. And Northern Ireland's also.
Hang on a second. If he's a defender of the Union, the analogy would be a parachute that opens on impact. All right.
So let me play a little clip that we have, and we specialize, by the way. And look, people, I Restore UK. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We've had our Facebook channel taken away. So if you like to go across and give us a like, subscribe, whatever. We do this with politicians. And look, Simon, I'm going to say that should this dirty deal happen come this week, I'm going to really, it's Restore UK, whilst they'll still be fighting to remain part of the United Kingdom, because I believe in that. Really, I'm going to direct my time and my efforts towards exposing corruption, and maybe even change the name to Restore Common Sense in Politics. Something that's going to attract all people, because I'll have to say that once this full and final settlement happens in Northern Ireland, that is us lost and gone forever, and we're never ever going to get that back again. So I'm going to play one here for Jeffrey, from Jeffrey Donaldson. Now, listen very carefully, listen to the defender of the Union, and see what he's prepared to accept. You're going to laugh here, Simon. This will give you a belly laugh, if nothing else. So let me just type in here. I have to go another way. I'll just have to search down. I have a lot of clips here. So where is he?
Not like me. I can't get jack shit on my computer. I can't play it on YouTube. I'm just giving up.
You see, what my problem is that I have so many Jeffrey Donaldson clips that I just had too much of a big list there in front of me. So where's the one? Here we go. Right, here we go. This is the one.
Passport controls in Liverpool. Does that matter to me? Absolutely not. The things that matter to me are so much more important than this silly debate about whether we'll have the odd border post or passport checks.
So there's the defender of the Union.
Silly border post.
He says it doesn't matter to me why there's passport checks in Liverpool. So it doesn't matter why there's an Irish border, an Irish sea border. It doesn't matter. There are more important things to worry about, he says, than silly border checks. Excuse me, isn't that what we've been fighting for? The removal of the border, no passports. Now here's the stupidness of what that man just said here. There's a common travel area right around the United Kingdom, and it allows for people from Ireland, even newcomers, to come up into Belfast, to go across in the ferries, to go into England, Scotland, and Wales, and back the other way. Mm. And he says that he doesn't mind if there's border. If he has to show his passport at Liverpool. If he has to show his passport at Liverpool, that means that Northern Ireland is no longer part of the United Kingdom. By the way,
exactly that. It's such a. He's an idiot. Right, well, I'm going to wrap this up because my tea came ages ago and it's been waiting, getting cold, and I've got to be at work at 7 a.m. So,
yeah,
joy.
Simon, thanks very much for the opportunity. It's been a good time on here. I've noticed some of the content, the live chat there, and I'll find a wee bit of time maybe tomorrow to watch it back. But thanks very much, and until next time.
No worries, mate. Right, let's end that. Thanks all for coming on. I've got to go to work. If I get back early enough tomorrow, it may be, but we'll see, because work again on Monday, thank God. So I'll see you in a bit.